Alright, so the first Aleo ASICs are just starting to ship out now, but are they worth it and will they actually ROI? Well, in this video, we're gonna look at the pros and cons of these things as well as what we know about them, but more importantly, we're also going to look at the unknown because there are quite a few things here that we don't know yet that we definitely need to talk about. And of course, we're gonna finish off the video looking at a massive in-depth spreadsheet that I've created to help us figure out whether or not these miners actually are going to ROI and be a worthwhile investment, or if they are just going to become glorified paperweights in a few weeks. And I'll talk you through that spreadsheet in simple terms so that it's easy to understand how to use it. And I'm also going to give you the link so that you can download it and input your own predictions to help you make a better judgment call on whether you think these miners are worth it or not based on your own analysis. So all of that is what's coming up after this quick word from our sponsor, Coin Mining Central, which is an online store for ASIC miners with an over 6-year track record of overwhelmingly positive customer reviews. They have all the latest and most profitable miners, from silent home miners to full-size ASICs. They can even provide immersion cooling systems and offer great bulk pricing on ASICs. Based in the UK, Coin Mining Central prioritizes great customer support, strict personal detail protection, and free worldwide shipping on all miners with no additional payment fees at checkout. You can also utilize their loyalty and referral programs to save on your next purchase. Plus, use my link down in the video description and code 𝗧𝗏 at checkout for a roughly $130 discount on every miner in your order priced over £1,000. So check out that link below together with the code to save on your purchase. Now, to start things off, nothing in this video is financial advice. And yes, Coin Mining Central, who do sell these miners, is sponsoring the video. However, as always, they did not specifically ask me to make this video. I'm free to say whatever I want about these miners. They did not get to review the video before I posted it or anything like that. And on top of that, this video is mostly just going to be about the hard facts and numbers of these machines, which you guys know is kind of what I'm all about anyway. And the main focus of this video is also going to be just giving you the spreadsheet that I've made and teaching you how to use it so that you can download it and input your own predictions so you can come to your own conclusion regarding these miners based on that. Because that's kind of my point here, that you should make your own predictions, come to your own conclusions, and use that as a foundation when it comes to potentially investing in new hardware for your mining farm. But that said, if you do end up coming to the conclusion that you do want to buy one of these things, I actually do have a discount code for you, which is just 𝗧𝗏_Aleo, which should give you around $125 off on any of the 3 currently available Aleo miners at Coin Mining Central. And if you do purchase one of them using that code and my affiliate link down in the video description, that also means I do get a small commission at no extra cost to you. So if you do end up doing that, well, thank you very much for supporting the channel. But with that out of the way, let's have a look at the actual pros and cons of these things before we get into the math and numbers of the whole situation. So these are the 3 miners that have currently been announced essentially for Aleo mining: 2 Goldshell miners and a IceRiver miner. These are all kind of small at-home friendly box miners, with the 2 Goldshell ones being essentially the same in terms of power efficiency. Just one is more powerful but also pulls more power and is a little bit more expensive than the other, whereas the IceRiver unit is not actually shipping yet. The latest I've heard is that these are going to start shipping in something like March, which, you know, with IceRiver, if they say March, they mean they're gonna start getting them ready to chip end of March, which means you're probably gonna be getting them towards, you know, first half of April rather. But the Goldshell ones are essentially starting to ship now, from what I understand. So this video is mainly going to focus on, should you be getting these right now, or rather how do you make a decision on whether or not you want to be getting either of these 2 Goldshell units right now, or do you want to wait for the IceRiver, or should you pass on all 3 of these? And right now, looking at these miners, you know, they look pretty appealing with making, you know, above $20 to above $30 per day in pure profit at a, you know, somewhat low-ish price of around roughly $2,500 for each of these machines, which would put them at a, hypothetical 100 days to ROI, and then anything after that would just be pure profit made. Plus, of course, add to that you could potentially sell the miner after those 100 days as well to recoup a big portion of the investment then, and it's all good, right? It looks pretty good. Well, there are, of course, a lot of things we need to take into account because it's definitely not going to be that easy. So let's get into the pros and cons of these things. And the big overarching con that we need to have a proper look at here is obviously the network hash rate. Essentially, how much hash rate is on the network, and more specifically, what is going to happen in the near future. Because as more hash rate comes on the network, it means, of course, that these miners are going to make less and less and less coin each day, and therefore, profits are going to go down for these machines. So let's have a start by just looking at the current network hash rate for Aleo. And as we can see, it's kind of been on a downward trend here for a good while. However, I definitely don't think anyone should expect that trend to continue, because as these miners start shipping out to people now and people start turning them on, that obviously is going to lead to a massive spike in the network hash rate, which means each, mega proof of hash rate that you have is going to yield you less coin. But it's of course not just as easy as these Goldshell miners coming online, because then in the near future, we also have these IceRivers coming online and again adding more hash rate onto the network. But again, it's not just that simple either, because, and this is where we get into the unknown of this whole situation, which is of course, where are the full-size ASICs? Because these, as I mentioned, are just small at-home friendly box miners, and they're the only ones that have been announced so far. But of course, more likely than not, there will be full-sized, 3500 watt machines coming in the very near future as well, that will pack a massively larger punch than these ones do. And when they come online, they are going to have an enormous impact on the network hash rate and therefore the profitability and coin yield of these little box miners. Or put more simply, way more powerful Aleo mining machines are probably going to be announced and start shipping out in the very near future, and they are, in the best case scenario, heavily going to affect the profitability of these little box miners, and worst case scenario, just straight up making them totally unprofitable. So there are two questions we need to ask ourselves essentially, starting with, for these Goldshell boxes that are shipping now, will they stay profitable enough for long enough, enabled to recoup that initial investment price of around $2,000 to $3,000? And of course that depends, well, first of all, on how many of these things are being produced and shipped out to people and how much that will affect the network hash rate. These are all things that we're going to be looking at in the spreadsheet and do calculations for in just a few minutes here. But then second of all, how many of these IceRivers are going to come online and how much are they going to affect the network hash rate and the profitability of these? And then lastly, how powerful are these potentially upcoming full-size ASIC miners going to be, and how many of those are going to be manufactured and shipped out to consumers, and how much will that affect the network hash rate and therefore the profitability of these things? And of course, what's the timeline for that whole thing too? Will you have enough time if you get one of these little box miners in order to recoup? Like, for example, right now it looks like these things at the current network hash rate and current coin price will ROI in about 100 days. Will we get 100 days before these potentially upcoming full-size ASIC miners are going to be announced and start shipping out? Or are they going to be announced next week and start shipping out the week after that? So that is kind of the risk that you're taking if you are investing in one of these. But of course, if you do get enough time there, there's a lot of potential upside with getting in super early on these miners. So what are those upsides? Well, that kind of naturally brings us onto the pros of these things, because there are some things about this whole situation surrounding these Aleo miners that we need to take into account, and that actually makes them pretty different from what we've seen previously with things like Kaspa miners when they first came out, Alephium ASIC miners when they first came out, the little Radiant box miners when they first came out, and so on. So I want to go through these pros just quickly here. The first pro being that the daily coin emissions to miners on the Aleo network is actually pretty substantial. Especially it's a lot bigger than what we've seen previously on projects like Alephium and Radiant. So what does that actually mean? Well, let's have a quick look here at mining pool stats, which lists proof of work coins, right? Mineable coins, and sorted by emissions per last 24 hours. Here we can see Bitcoin is the biggest with 43.5 million per day. Dogecoin is next with 3.5 million. We then have Kaspa with about $500,000 per day. And then we have Aleo in spot number 4 here, paying out well over, well, $350,000 per day to miners right now. And for example, if I just search up Radiant here, we can see that Radiant only pays out, well, not even $3,000 to miners every day. So what exactly does that actually mean for us miners? Well, it essentially means that there's a lot more money to be shared by the people mining Aleo each day. And practically, that means that these miners are a lot more resistant to new hash rate coming online. Or in other words, it would take a lot more network hash rate coming online in order for profitability to really go down in the dumps. And we're gonna see that more when we look into the spreadsheet in just a couple of minutes here. But the second pro for these Aleo miners that I wanna touch on here is the emission schedule, or rather how the coins are going to be paid out to miners over the long term here. Because a good example of something that we've seen recently is obviously Kaspa, where the coin emissions to miners are cut by about 5% every single month, which essentially means that if everything else stayed the same, like network hash rate, you would still be making about half as much in terms of coin yield mining Kaspa as you did a year ago with the same hash rate. Aleo, on the other hand, has a linear 10% per year reduction, which means that instead of the curve kind of looking like this, it looks more like this, just a steady, slow decline of about 10% per year, or a little less than 1% per month. And that is an absolute percentage rather than a relative percentage. Practically speaking, what that really means is that the mining rewards aren't going to slow down as aggressively on Aleo as they have done on other coins, specifically Kaspa. Now we've touched on the cons as well as the pros of these new Aleo miners, but there are also some kind of neutrals that I want to go through before we have a look at the numbers of these things. The first one being the tokenomics of Aleo, or essentially who has all of the Aleo coins. And it's not great, right, on Aleo. We can see here on their little distribution chart here that a good, more than a third of all of their Aleo tokens are distributed to early backers, which is their way of saying investors, right? Early investors, people who got early access to invest money into the project, and because of that, they were given a bunch of tokens, a third of all of the Aleo tokens, or at least that is how that usually works in these cases. And the reason why I say that this is a neutral rather than a con or a pro is because it kind of has both upsides and downsides. The downsides are pretty obvious, it's not fair. These people got early access to the token in exchange of having a vested, financial incentive in the token. But that's kind of the pro of this, because these are, big corporations usually that have invested money into this project, and these investors, they're usually gonna want their money back. So if they are being quote unquote paid for their investment in a whole bunch of tokens, it's kind of in their best interest that these tokens are gonna, go up in value over time. So they are gonna want to see good things for this project, which usually means that they are going to, at the best of their ability, do what they can to make this be a successful project where the coin price goes up to reflect that. Now, the second neutral here that I want to bring up is obviously that the coin price for Aleo is, well, not looking so hot right now. As we can see here, it kind of started out strong the first few days here, and then it's just been kind of going down, which is probably also why we've seen this kind of downwards trend on the Aleo network hash rate. Now, why I say this is neither a con nor a pro is because it kind of depends how you're looking at this whole situation. A first easy way of looking at it is obviously, well, this coin is dead, it's died, right? Or another way of looking at it is obviously that, well, it's been well over $6 before. That means it has the potential to be $6, and it, you know, realistically could go up to above $6 in the future, which would be a 15x in coin price from here. Of course, there's no guarantee at all that that will happen, but it's a mindset of it has been $6.50 before, therefore it could be $6.50 again in the future. Now, that's sort of the base level of just looking at the coin price and what that means, but I want to take it a little step further here by comparing it to a different coin that has been in a somewhat similar situation as Aleo, which would be Alephium. Because if we start by looking at Alephium here, especially the first kind of few months here, you can see very similar type of curve here where, you know, it was pretty high in terms of coin price right as it launched on exchanges here, and then it just kind of died down with no interest, where a few months later people would probably, you know, be saying, oh, it's a dead project or whatever. Kind of similar to what the coin price graph looks like for Aleo. Now, why I bring up Alephium specifically here is because it's kind of already gone through this process that we are now kind of seeing Aleo go through, with it to start out being this hyped up coin, which is GPU mineable, the coin price crashes down, and then it gets ASIC miners, and, you know, it goes from there. So let's see what Alephium looks like if we zoom out more. Obviously, the coin price kind of looked a bit steady, not that much happening. And then obviously we had this massive, you know, increase here about a year ago. Obviously, I'm not saying that this is what's going to happen to Aleo. You know, only time can tell, and we can't see the future, so we don't know what's going to happen. But the reason I bring it up is less to do with kind of predicting the price, but rather just to, you know, compare the different situations we are in here. Because with Alephium, where the first ASIC miners were announced were here. And if I remember rightly, at that point, they were around $10,000, and they were also making around $40 of profit per day. Now, we are at a similar point with these Aleo ASICs, where they are also making, well, not quite $40 a day, but, you know, $25 to $35 per day. However, the price of them is like a fraction of that, right? They're like a quarter of that price at, you know, 2,400 rather than 10 grand. So now, just hypothetically, if Aleo's coin price is going to mimic Alephium's coin price, and again, that is, you know, who knows if that's going to happen. I'm not guaranteeing that at all. That could happen, but it could also happen that Aleo's coin price just stays down here in the 40-cent range, or it goes all the way down to 0 too. We can never know that, right? But just for the sake of comparison, would you rather get a $10,000 machine that makes around $30 a day here, or would you rather get a $2,500 machine that also makes around $30 a day? I think that choice is pretty obvious, right? And I guess to summarize this, you know, neutral point that I'm bringing up here in regards to the coin price is, you can either see it as, you know, Aleo's coin price has a lot of upside right now, and you're essentially getting these miners for pretty cheap, because usually when the coin price of a project goes up, so does the price of the miners for that project. So for example, if the price of Aleo were to go back up over $6 in the next few days, I can guarantee that these miners are not going to be, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 anymore. They are going to be $10,000 to $30,000. And to summarize this whole pros and cons list that I've just given you here, it basically all just boils down to the fact that these, you know, first few batches of these little box miners for Aleo fall under the high risk, high reward mining strategy. Because it essentially just comes down to will you have enough time mining with these things before the bigger, more powerful miners come online and obliterate the profitability, and or will the Aleo coin price go up enough in the near future to justify the amount of coins that you are going to be able to mine with these things before then. And now, if you're still with me, let's actually have a look at the spreadsheet that I've made here. And as I mentioned, I'm going to leave a link to this spreadsheet down in the video description. And what you can do is you can click on that link, and then you can just click on File and make a copy. And what that does is it makes it so that you're able to edit this spreadsheet and input your own predictions as well as your own numbers for things like your power price and so on. And when you first do that and save your copy of the spreadsheet, it's going to probably give you a little notification saying that this sheet is fetching data from outside. That is just my way of bringing in things like the coin price and the network hash rate. You have to allow that in order for the sheet to work. And the first thing you will be met with are just these disclaimers here about using the sheet, and as well as a little guide on how to actually use the sheet. But we're gonna go through that now anyway. So this is the actual sheet. If/when new miners are announced for Aleo, I'm going to add them to the sheet here. However, if you've made a copy of the sheet at this point in time, that copy obviously won't have those newer miners, so you'll have to come back and download a new copy of the sheet based on, you know, a potential future version of this sheet. So just keep that in mind. But essentially how this sheet works is these yellow fields are for you to edit. And we start with just some data that's being fetched here, like the current network hash rate, the daily coin yield per 1 mega hash, or it's actually mega proofs on the Aleo network, as well as the coin price of Aleo today. Then you can fill in your power price, how long you expect to be mining on these machines for, how much you expect the coin price to change before you sell your mined coins, if you think you'll be able to sell your miner in the future, how much you expect you'll be able to sell it for based on the current price of the miner. So if you don't think you'll be able to sell it in the future, just put 0 here. If you think you're gonna be able to sell it for a quarter of what you've bought it for now, put 0.25. For the expected coin price growth, that works exactly the same. So if you think the coin price isn't going to go up, but isn't going to down from here either, / you just want to compare it on a 1-to-1 ratio of buying the coin versus buying the miner, then you can just put 1 here. That means no coin price growth or reduction in coin price from here. We're gonna try different scenarios here. Let's leave it at 6 times increase for now, which is, you know, less than half of the all-time high of Aleo. As we looked at, that was about 15 times. Yeah, it used to be like $6.50, and now it's down to like less than 50 cents. So yeah, less than half of all-time high. Then we have these 2 fields that you can fill in as well. So the first one here being the estimated immediate net hash growth. So how much do you think the network hash rate will grow by the time you think you'll get your miner? Let's hypothetically say you're ordering a Goldshell AE box and you're gonna get it at the same time as everyone else, and you think, well, they've probably sold about 1,000 of these. Well, that means about 37 giga proofs per second is the immediate net hash growth that you're expecting. So when you and everyone else turns on their AE boxes, that's another 37 giga proofs on the network hash rate immediately as you start mining with this thing. And then we can also fill in how much we expect the net hash to grow every single month from there. And that's what we do in this field. So for example, 10 gigaproofs per second. And those fields are used for the, hypothetical long-term estimates of how much these things can make based on the numbers that you input here. One final note before we get into the actual comparison here is this little field that I've added here, which is just how much the current network hash rate is actually equivalent to in terms of the most powerful miner that we currently know of, which is the iceRiver AE0, which is 50 megaproofs. So the current network hash rate is just over 200 gigaproofs, which is equivalent to about 4,000 iceRiver AE0s. Now, let's have an actual look at these miners finally and the numbers here. So you can see price of the miner, you can see discount code here if you want to get it, how much that discount is and how much the miners cost after using the discount. Then we can see if they are in stock or not. And as we already learned about the iceRiver, probably not shipping until April. Link to get it if you do want to get it. But then we have the actual stats of the miners here. So 50 megaproofs for the AE0, 37 for the AE box, and 44 for the AE box Pro, which is the one that they announced just like a couple days ago now. Plus the power consumption. And now we get to sort of the first base level way of comparing mining hardware. And that's the efficiency, aka the watts per hash rate, and then the sort of value for money, which is the dollars spent buying the miner per hash rate. Or in this case, the watts used per mega proof of hash rate, or dollars spent per mega proof of hash rate. And as we can see here, the iceRiver is obviously crushing both of the AE boxes by Goldshell. The only upside for the Goldshells are that they are available right now, which does give you that head start for a few months before the iceRivers come out. And as we can see here, the regular AE box is actually slightly more efficient than the Pro version. But of course, the Pro version is a little cheaper per hash. But other than that, there's not that much more to say here. The iceRiver on paper is better than both of the Goldshells, but of course, it's not available for another few months. Now, looking at the current mining results for these things, what we can see is how much money is it bringing in each day, how much is the power cost for running these things, then, revenue minus power cost gives you your daily profit as of right now. And then based just on that, how long does it take you to make enough money to cover both the power cost as well as the initial price of buying the miners? And we can see here for the AE Box Pro, that's 93 days, the regular AE Box 113 days, and the iceRiver, if we magically could buy it today, it would be only 65 days. Now, these numbers here, the current mining results, do not take these, estimations of net hash growth into account. These are just to compare them on a today basis. And that's why we call it the current mining results. So let's instead look at long-term mining results here. And these are the numbers that do take the future estimates into account here. And again, I don't recommend just going off of the numbers I've put here. They are almost close to random, and you should definitely go down in the description, make a copy of the spreadsheet, enter your own predictions, and base your decision on those, not what I'm showing you here. I'm essentially just showing you how to use the spreadsheet to make your own predictions. Now, with that said, using these numbers that I've input up here, we can see that these obviously look incredible right now. If you are to mine for 2 years with these, with an immediate net hash growth of 37 gigaproofs, and then a monthly growth of 10 gigaproofs per month, then you're going to see insane return on investment on these machines. With the AE box, the lowest end one, making $60,000 by the end of this. Also take into account that is with a 6 times increase in coin price. So if we put that down to 1x, then you can see, well, we're still, more than tripling our initial investment here. And that's the final revenue. then we can see after power, it's, you know, $9,800 minus out the cost of the miner as well. So minus power, minus the cost of the miner, we're just below $7,000 in pure profit. And that's $7,000 more in your wallet than when you started, which gives, you know, an estimated ROI of well over 300% at this point. Now, of course, that is probably not what it's going to look like, because we're gonna have the iceRivers come online, and we're, you know, more than likely also going to see big full-size ASIC miners coming online that are going to very, very heavily affect the network hash rate. How much? Well, we don't know yet. And that's when you're gonna have to go in and make your own predictions in this sheet here. Something I do want to show you is, let's instead just say that we get only 2 months with these Goldshell boxes before the iceRivers come online, as well as bigger size ASICs. So let's just pretend we get 2 months of mining with these things before any sort of major thing happens to the network hash rate. And let's say, you know, they sell 1,000 of these combined. Well, let's say we add another 50 gigaproofs to the network, and another 10 after this first month of mining, and then another 10 after that. We can see that we still end up with about $2,000 mined with these. Of course, we fall a little bit short of our initial investment here. However, if we just see a little bit of a coin price growth from there, so let's just say the coin price doubles from here, then we have made a profit. Obviously, at that point, if you could just buy coins versus buy the miner, you would have made a bigger profit just buying the coin as opposed to buying the miner. But it also might not be the case that, you know, this miner immediately goes to being unprofitable after the first 2 months. Maybe we get a good, you know, equivalent of maybe 4 months of mining at this rate. And then we are above break even on both of these Goldshell boxes. And this is what I mean with, you're gonna have to download the sheet and just play around with it, try out different scenarios and see where you land on the spectrum of if you think this might be worth it or not. But I do have another thing that I want to show you here, which is the sort of in-depth analysis of these miners. And this does not have to do so much with like long-term predictions, because the more long-term we try to predict things, the more wrong we're usually going to be. This looks more at like the current situation and what exactly is going on with these miners. Starting with, well, what is the highest profitable power price that you could run these miners on profitably right now? Or in other words, it's just how much money are these making per kilowatt hour they use. And you can see that this iceRiver, if you were to magically have one right now, it would be profitable at a power price of over $32 per kilowatt hour. Most of you are probably under 30 cents per kilowatt hour. So just to put that in perspective. Now, the second thing, and I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but these green kind of like scaling fields are the ones that I think are most interesting to look at in terms of comparing the miners between themselves. And the next one of those, which I think is really relevant, is what I call the net hash growth resistance score. And this is something that I've kind of quote unquote invented. I don't know if it's an invention exactly, but essentially what this does is it takes the miner that you're looking at and it's saying, okay, take this miner, take my current power cost price. So we've entered 15 cents per kilowatt hour here. How many of the most powerful miner there is for this coin needs to come onto the network before the miner we're looking at right now would become unprofitable for me at my 15 cents per kilowatt hour electricity price? And for the AE0, that's 415,000 AE0s that need to come online. So since the AE0 is the one we're looking at, and it's also the most powerful one right now at 50 megaproofs per second, but looking at the regular AE box then instead, it would still take 82,000 AE0s coming online if you're paying 15 cents per kilowatt hour before the AE box would become unprofitable. Now, I hope the way I'm explaining this is making sense, and I'm going to rush through these last few fields here, because then before we finish up the video, I just want to do one short little prediction for what the future full-size ASIC miners might look like. But next we have the net hash growth to be unprofitable. Essentially, how much does the network hash rate need to grow from here before the miner becomes unprofitable at the power price that you've entered into here? It's very similar, it's just more a looking at the net hash in total. So we can see it is a 2000% growth from here, or a 20 times the size now. So not double, not triple, but 20-ple the network hash rate from what it is now before the AE box becomes unprofitable. This one is interesting as well. What would the coin price need to do in order for these machines to ROI or break even in a year? And usually when looking at miners, it's more that this needs to be a positive number. For example, in order for Bitmain E9 Pro to ROI in 365 days, the price of Ethereum Classic needs to grow by, I don't know, 120% in order for the E9 Pro to ROI in a year. However, with these, the coin price can actually decrease pretty significantly from here, and these would still ROI in a year. That is, of course, completely now based on the current mining profitability and network hash rate. So again, this does not take these future predictions into account. This is based on what we know as of today. So again, this long-term field is for making long-term future predictions. These other ones are to compare these miners based on the actual real information that we have today. And then finally, in that same vein, is like, what is the lowest coin price where these would still be profitable as of today at today's network hash rate? And we can see the AceRiver AE0, the coin price could actually decrease by 99.01%, and the AceRiver would still be profitable. And I just I did all this math to make these fields work like that. And when I saw 99%, I was like, there's no way. So I just double checked it on mining now, because if you go into one of the miners here, you can see that they have this little bar here to sort of like compare profit versus the power cost. And as you can see here, the profit is 99.31% versus the cost of the power here, which means, no, this is actually correct. The coin price could decrease by 99% from here. And the AE0 at the current network hash rate would still be profitable, which I just found to be insane. Of course, we don't have this yet, and of course, it's going to change a lot when, potential full-size ASICs do come onto the network. And speaking of that, let's predict what those actual full-size ASICs might be. So an easy way of doing that is usually AceRiver will have full-size ASICs coming. And those tend to actually have the same efficiency, meaning the same hash rate per watt as these little AE boxes, these little zero boxes. So that's what we've seen on Alephium, that's what we've seen on Kaspa, and so on. So another, prediction there is those big full-size ASICs usually land around the 3500 watt range of power, which means they're pulling 35 times as much power as this little box miner, which means they will also have 35 times the hash rate of it, since the efficiency, hash per watt will be the same. So let's just make that assumption and take 50 megaproofs and multiply that by 35. And we can see that lands us at about 1750 megaproofs. Now, why am I doing this prediction here? Well, it's because I want to look at this number here. Remember the net hash growth resistance score, which is essentially how many of the most powerful miner for this coin does it take coming online onto the network before the miner in question becomes unprofitable. So right now we can see that it's 82,000 AE0s for the AE box, it's 415,000 AE0s for the AE0, 76,000 AE0s for the AE BOX Pro to become unprofitable. But what if we do see this full-size ASIC? That would be 1,750 megaproofs per second. And well, then things changes. However, maybe not as drastically as many of us thought, because the AE0, it would still take almost 12,000 of a potential full-size ASIC with the same efficiency as the AE0 for the AE0 to become unprofitable. It would take 2,500 almost for the AE box and just over 2,000 for the AE BOX Pro. But this video is long enough as it is, so don't forget to link to the spreadsheet down in the video description, as well as